Okay, let's talk about Moonfall. This is a movie I was actually really excited to go and see because from the moment I saw the very first trailer, the fact that the whole tagline was in 1969 we went to the moon, and then now present day the moon comes to us. I mean, it's such a ridiculous concept. But you attach Roland Emmerich to it, you put some cool stars like Halle Berry and Patrick Wilson in it. Sign me up. And as excited as I was going into this movie, I walked out just feeling very bland about the movie. Almost really not enjoying my time at all in this movie. Listen, this movie is boring. And that is probably the worst part about seeing a disaster movie is if you go and see a movie that's supposed to be this disaster, yeah, you can have corny acting, you can have these corny one-liners and the story can be terrible and stuff, but as long as the action's good, as long as, the earth getting destroyed and everything is cool, you can still have an entertaining time with the movie. This movie, it's just boring. And then it really took until probably the third act of the movie for me to really kind of, because I was kind of all slouched in my chair the whole time. I'm sitting in a reclining seat and I'm fidgeting because I'm so bored. And then the last like 30 minutes of the movie finally gets going. And to me, that was very, I know Roland Emmerich is not like the greatest director of all time, right? And he's very, I mean, he makes what he makes. But I've always found his movies as bad as some of them are. Even if you look at like the late '90s Godzilla movie that he made, I honestly I thought his last movie Midway, I didn't think that was very good either. But as bad as some of his movies can be, at least I always find some sort of entertainment value of them. And this movie was just a snooze fest, and it sucks because there's a lot of well-known actors in this movie, and Patrick Wilson just seems like he's just mailing it in. Halle Berry, really, she's just doing this for a paycheck and stuff. And a lot of that, maybe because this movie was filmed during the pandemic, you could tell like a lot of times where certain actors' reactions are caught, or some of the lines they say, maybe they're just trying to get it done real quick and just move on to the next one. The VFX in this movie, everything that has to do with the moon is fine. Everything else, as far as like if there's flooding in this movie, some of the shots with the Earth getting destroyed, all their budget went to basically making the moon look really, really cool, and it works. The moon looks amazing in this movie, but everything else it just looks so. It looks like mid 2000s. Like it looks like The Day After Tomorrow, which is another Roland Emmerich movie. It kind of looks like that sort of VFX. So they obviously spent most of their budget they had on just the moon aspect of this movie, and everything else when the moon looks as good as it does and everything else doesn't match up to it, it almost takes you out of the movie. It breaks the immersion. I said earlier in my review how I was excited about just the concept itself in this movie, and while the concept is very schlocky and everything, this movie does something towards the end of the movie where I would say, if I had to break this up, right, I'd say 90% of the movie is just total schlocky mess, which is fine. It's a disaster movie. It can be that way. It's just too bad it wasn't that entertaining. But like 10% of this movie actually has a little bit more intelligence to it. And there's this idea that the movie really starts to kind of bring in and ends up having towards the end of the movie, where I remember sitting in the theater and I'm just sitting there like, huh, what if this movie wasn't written as like a disaster movie? What if they took that concept that they just did and they created like a legitimate, like really cool sci-fi movie with it? Like what if Steven Spielberg had directed this movie, or even like someone like a Christopher Nolan, with a different script, but with this one idea that they plant in the movie? Because this one idea, I kept thinking to myself, dude, that in itself is actually a really cool idea, and it's too bad that that idea itself was wasted on a disaster movie. Because I couldn't believe it. I was like, man, this movie's total schlock, which is fine, disaster movie. But then it comes up with this really cool idea, and I'm just like, dude, you know what? Somebody's got to make that idea. Like, I don't even care if anybody says, oh, well, they stole that from the movie Moonfall. That one idea, that one seed that they have, it's too bad that the entire movie could not have been that. Overall, I think Moonfall is a very mediocre movie. Has that one really cool idea in it that is kind of wasted on this movie. But other than that, it's a snooze fest. And for a movie that clocks in at 2 hours and 10 minutes, for it to basically be a snooze fest all the way up until like an hour and 35 minutes in, I just can't really recommend anybody going and seeing this in the theaters, even if you really like going and seeing movies in IMAX. Because listen, I mean, one of the biggest reasons I wanted to see this in the theaters is because I like disaster movies. I wanted to see explosions on the big screen. The problem is the VFX on everything that's not the moon looks absolutely terrible, so it doesn't even look that great on the big screen. It looks like Day After Tomorrow effects at some point. So I really can't recommend anybody go and see this movie. This is definitely a movie to just basically wait until it comes to a streaming service to watch. Even when it comes out to rent for $4, I wouldn't even say this movie's worth $4. It's a snooze fest, which is disappointing because I was really looking forward to this disaster movie. Hopefully they take that one concept I was talking about and they kind of somebody goes and makes like a whole different movie with that concept alone, because it's really cool and it's too bad it was wasted on a disaster movie. Anyway, I'd like to thank you all for watching my review, and I hope to see you back in my next one.